In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and dreams seemed larger than life, lived a man named Jonathan Steele. To most people, he was the epitome of success, a billionaire who had built an empire from scratch. His name was synonymous with innovation, wealth, and power. But behind the polished suits and dazzling smile lay a man burdened by loneliness and guilt. Despite his accomplishments, Jonathan often felt like something was missing in his life. He worked tirelessly, drowning himself in meetings, deals, and business expansions, hoping that success would fill the void inside him. Yet no matter how much money he made or how many accolades he received, the emptiness remained. Jonathan's days were filled with boardroom discussions, international calls, and high-profile events. His nights, however, were quieter, spent alone, in his luxurious penthouse overlooking Central Park. The view was breathtaking, but it did little to ease the ache in his heart. Friends invited him to parties, colleagues praised his achievements, and admirers sought his attention, yet none of it brought him true happiness. Deep down, Jonathan longed for connection, for someone who truly understood him beyond the glitz and glamour of his public persona. One cold December evening, as snow blanketed the city streets, Jonathan found himself rushing through Manhattan. A crucial meeting awaited him across town, and time was slipping away. The roads were slick with ice, and the biting wind cut through even the thickest coats. Jonathan sat in the backseat of his chauffeur-driven limousine, scrolling through emails on his phone while mentally preparing for the presentation ahead. Outside, the world moved at its usual frenetic pace. Taxi horns blared, pedestrians hurried past storefronts adorned with holiday decorations, and Christmas lights twinkled brightly against the dark sky. As they approached a particularly treacherous stretch of road near Central Park, disaster struck without warning. The driver hit a patch of black ice, sending the car spinning out of control. Jonathan barely had time to react before the vehicle skidded off the road and crashed into a snowbank. Metal crunched, glass shattered, and the airbag deployed with a deafening pop. For a moment, everything went silent except for the sound of his ragged breathing. Dazed and disoriented, Jonathan realized he was trapped. The door wouldn't budge, and the weight of the wreckage pinned him in place. Panic set in as he struggled to free himself, but every attempt only left him more exhausted and injured. Just when hope seemed lost, a figure emerged from the swirling snowstorm. At first, Jonathan thought he was hallucinating. Perhaps the shock of the accident was playing tricks on his mind. But as the silhouette grew clearer, he saw it was a woman. She wore a simple coat, her scarf pulled tightly around her face to shield herself from the freezing winds. Without hesitation, she rushed toward the mangled car, shouting words of reassurance. "Hold on, I'm here to help." Her voice carried warmth despite the icy conditions. The woman, whose name was Amara Thompson, acted quickly, using sheer determination and strength. She managed to pry open the jammed door just enough for Jonathan to squeeze out. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and pain shot through his ribs with each movement. But he knew he couldn't stay in the car any longer. Flames began licking at the edges of the engine, threatening to engulf the entire vehicle. With Amara's guidance, Jonathan stumbled out of the wreckage mere seconds before the car erupted into flames. They collapsed onto the snowy ground, both shaken but alive. Amara wasted no time ensuring Jonathan was okay. She called for emergency services and stayed by his side until paramedics arrived. As they wrapped him in blankets and loaded him onto a stretcher, Jonathan tried to express his gratitude, but words failed him. All he could do was stare at this stranger who had risked her own life to save his. Her eyes held a kindness that touched him deeply, and for the first time in years he felt a flicker of genuine human connection. Before he could ask her name or thank her properly, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving him with nothing but the memory of her bravery. At the hospital, doctors treated Jonathan's injuries, a mild concussion, bruised ribs, and several cuts. Physically, he would recover, but emotionally, the incident left an indelible mark. Lying in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, Jonathan replayed the events of the night over and over in his mind. Who was this woman? Why had she stopped to help a complete stranger? And why had she vanished so quickly afterward? Questions swirled in his head, but answers eluded him. Determined to find the woman who had saved his life, Jonathan instructed his team of private investigators to track her down. He described her appearance, recalled snippets of their brief interaction, and provided details about the location of the accident. Days turned into weeks, and though leads came and went, none panned out. It was as if Amara had vanished into thin air. Frustrated but undeterred, Jonathan decided to take matters into his own hands. He remembered her mentioning something about working at a community clinic in Harlem, so he arranged a visit under the pretense of donating funds to local charities. When Jonathan arrived at the modest clinic, he was greeted by friendly staff members eager to show him around. He asked discreetly about Amara, describing her as best he could. To his dismay, he learned that she had recently left her position without leaving a forwarding address. However, what he did discover during his visit struck a chord within him. Amara had been beloved by everyone who knew her, a dedicated nurse who went above and beyond for her patients, often sacrificing her own needs to ensure theirs were met. Stories of her compassion and selflessness painted a picture of a remarkable woman, one who embodied the very qualities Jonathan admired most. Though disappointed that he hadn't found Amara, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter was far from over. Little did he know, fate had already set another chapter in motion, one that would bring them together again in ways neither could have imagined. For now, though, all he could do was hold on to the image of her kind eyes and the memory of her courage on that fateful winter night. In the months following the accident, Jonathan Steele found himself haunted by memories of the woman who had saved his life. Her face, her voice, and the way she had risked everything to pull him from the wreckage were etched into his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about her bravery or the fleeting connection he'd felt in those terrifying moments. It wasn't just gratitude that drove him. It was something deeper, a sense that their meeting had been more than coincidence. Determined to find her, Jonathan threw himself into the search with the same relentless energy he brought to his business ventures. He hired private investigators, scoured social media, and even visited local community centers in Harlem where she might have been active. Yet despite his efforts, Amara Thompson remained elusive. Every lead turned into a dead end. Phone numbers were disconnected, addresses led nowhere, and no one seemed to know much about her personal life. Frustration gnawed at Jonathan as days stretched into weeks. How could someone so extraordinary simply vanish? The mystery only deepened, his resolve to uncover the truth. One evening, while reviewing files provided by his investigators, Jonathan stumbled upon a detail that caught his attention. A former colleague of Amara's mentioned she worked part-time at a small clinic in Harlem, before leaving abruptly. Intrigued, Jonathan decided to visit the clinic himself. Dressed casually to blend in, he walked through the doors of the modest building tucked away on a quiet street. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming, a stark contrast to the cold efficiency of the corporate world he inhabited daily. The staff greeted him warmly, assuming he was there for a routine checkup, or perhaps interested in making a donation. Jonathan didn't correct them. Instead, he struck up conversations, asking casually if anyone remembered Amara. The moment he mentioned her name, faces lit up with admiration. "Amara," one nurse said, smiling fondly. "She was amazing. Always put others first, you know. She worked long hours here even though we barely paid her enough to get by." Another added, "She cared deeply about this community. She'd often stay late to help patients who couldn't afford care." As they spoke, Jonathan pieced together a clearer picture of Amara. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a pillar of strength for those around her. People trusted her, relied on her, and loved her. Stories poured in about how she'd gone out of her way to assist struggling families, delivering medicine to the elderly, organizing food drives, and mentoring young people. One story stood out. During a particularly harsh winter, Amara had used her own savings to buy coats and blankets for homeless individuals in the neighborhood. Hearing these accounts made Jonathan realize just how selfless she truly was. She wasn't motivated by fame or fortune, but by an unwavering desire to make the world a better place. But when Jonathan asked where Amara was now, the mood shifted. Smiles faded, replaced by sadness. "We don't know," admitted the clinic manager, shaking her head. "She left suddenly a few months ago. Didn't say much, just packed up and went. We've tried reaching out, but she hasn't responded." There was a heaviness in the room, a shared grief over losing someone so vital to their community. Jonathan felt it too, though he barely knew her. The realization that she was gone, and that he might never see her again, hit him like a punch to the gut. On his way home that night, Jonathan replayed the conversations in his mind. Who was this woman who gave so freely of herself yet slipped away without explanation? Why had she disappeared? And why hadn't she reached out after saving his life? These questions swirled endlessly, keeping him awake long into the night. For all his wealth and resources, he felt powerless to solve the mystery of Amara Thompson. Time passed and Jonathan returned to his usual routine. Work consumed him once more, filling the void left by unanswered questions. But no matter how busy he stayed, thoughts of Amara lingered in the back of his mind. He began noticing parallels between her life and his own, or rather, the lack thereof. While she dedicated herself to helping others, he spent his days chasing profits and accolades. What legacy would he leave behind? Would anyone remember him the way people remembered Amara? Then, one day, nearly 2 years after the accident, Jonathan received a letter. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, a plain envelope with no return address, but something about it compelled him to open it immediately. Inside was a handwritten note along with several photographs. As he read the words on the page, his breath caught in his throat. "Dear Mr. Steele," the letter began, "my name is Maya Thompson. I'm Amara's younger sister. I'm writing to share news I wish I didn't have to. My beloved sister passed away unexpectedly several months ago. Before she died, she entrusted me with some things she wanted you to know." Jonathan's hands trembled as he continued reading. The letter explained that Amara had been pregnant at the time of the accident. The triplets were his children. Stunned, Jonathan stared at the photographs enclosed with the letter. They showed 3 adorable toddlers, each bearing unmistakable resemblances to him. Their smiles radiated joy, their eyes sparkled with curiosity, and their presence seemed to leap off the page. This revelation rocked Jonathan to his core. Not only had Amara kept such monumental news from him, but she had also raised their children alone, refusing to burden him with responsibility. Maya's letter went on to explain Amara's reasoning. "She didn't want to disrupt your life or take advantage of your position," Maya wrote. "To her, raising our kids was a gift, not a hardship. She loved them fiercely and taught them to be kind, strong, and compassionate, just like her. She hoped someday you'd meet them and understand why she chose this path." Tears welled up in Jonathan's eyes as he absorbed the weight of Amara's sacrifice. She had given him a second chance at life that snowy night, and now, through their children, she had given him another, a chance to build a family, to connect, to love. The emptiness he'd carried for so long suddenly made sense. It wasn't success or recognition he needed. It was purpose. And Amara had unknowingly pointed him toward it. For days afterward, Jonathan couldn't shake the emotions coursing through him. Guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had missed 6 years of his children's lives because of decisions made without his knowledge. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, not at Amara, but at the circumstances that had kept them apart. Most of all, though, he felt awe. Awe at the incredible woman who had saved him twice, once from physical danger and again by giving him a reason to live fully. Determined to honor Amara's memory and embrace the family she had created, Jonathan resolved to meet his children. He contacted Maya, expressing his gratitude for her honesty and asking for permission to visit. Though hesitant at first, Maya agreed, sensing Jonathan's sincerity. She assured him that while Amara was gone, her spirit lived on through the triplets. "They're her greatest legacy," Maya told him, "and now they're yours too." With newfound clarity, Jonathan prepared to embark on the next chapter of his life. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust, forging bonds, and stepping into the role of father wouldn't happen overnight. But Jonathan knew one thing for certain. Amara had changed his life forever, and through her children, he would carry her light forward. The letter from Maya Thompson sent shockwaves through Jonathan's life, upending everything he thought he knew about himself and his future. For days he couldn't focus on work or even sleep. His mind was consumed by the revelation that he had 3 children, triplets, and that their mother, Amara, had passed away without ever telling him. The photographs of the children haunted him in the best possible way. Their bright smiles and curious eyes reminded him so much of Amara, yet they also reflected pieces of himself. He felt a surge of emotions: guilt for not being there, gratitude for Amara raising them with such love, and an overwhelming desire to meet them. Jonathan spent hours staring at the photos, trying to memorize every detail. There was Ava, her curly hair framing a face full of creativity; Elijah, whose serious expression hinted at a sharp mind; and Zara, who looked like she could conquer the world with her fearless grin. Each child seemed unique, yet together, they formed a perfect trio. He wondered what their voices sounded like, what made them laugh, and how they navigated the world without their mother. Most of all, he wondered if they would accept him as their father after so many years apart. After corresponding with Maya, Jonathan arranged to visit Atlanta, where she and the triplets lived. The trip felt surreal, as though he were stepping into uncharted territory. He wasn't just traveling across states, he was entering a new chapter of his life, one filled with uncertainty, but also immense potential. Before leaving New York, he spent hours preparing. What should he say? How should he act? Should he bring gifts? These questions swirled in his mind, but no amount of planning could fully prepare him for the moment he would finally meet his children. When Jonathan arrived, in Atlanta, Maya greeted him warmly at the door of her modest home. She was kind but cautious, clearly protective of the triplets. "They don't know you yet," she warned gently. "Take it slow. Let them come to you." Jonathan nodded, understanding the importance of earning their trust. As much as he wanted to sweep them into his arms and make up for lost time, he knew this wasn't about him. It was about them. Maya led him to the living room, where the triplets were playing. At first they didn't notice him. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching colorful drawings in a notebook. Elijah was building a tower out of blocks, his brow furrowed in concentration. Zara darted around the room, pretending to be a superhero, saving imaginary people. Jonathan stood quietly, watching them interact, marveling at how alive they seemed. They were vibrant, full of energy, and so unmistakably Amara's children. "Kids," Maya said softly, drawing their attention. "This is Mr. Steele. He's someone very special." The room fell silent as the triplets turned to look at him. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to skepticism. Zara tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Who are you?" she asked bluntly, always the bold one. Jonathan knelt down to their level, his heart pounding. "Hi," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "My name is Jonathan. I'm your dad." For a moment, no one spoke. Ava's pencil hovered over her paper, Elijah's hands froze mid-block placement, and Zara's mouth formed a small O of surprise. Then, as if on cue, all 3 burst into questions at once. "Dad? Like our real dad?" Zara demanded. "Why haven't we met you before?" Ava added, her tone guarded. Elijah remained quiet, observing Jonathan, with piercing eyes that seemed far older than his 6 years. It was clear he was processing the information carefully, weighing whether to trust this stranger claiming to be his father. Jonathan took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment that would shape their relationship moving forward. "I didn't know about you until recently," he admitted honestly. "Your mom, Amara, she kept you safe and loved you so much. She was an amazing woman. But now that I know about you, I want to be part of your lives. If you'll let me." His words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. The triplets exchanged glances, silently communicating in that intuitive way siblings often do. Finally, Zara stepped forward, her confidence unwavering. "Prove it," she challenged. "Show us you mean it." Over the next few days, Jonathan did exactly that. He stayed in Atlanta, spending time with the triplets and learning about their personalities. Ava, the artist, showed him her sketches and explained the stories behind each one. Elijah, the budding scientist, proudly demonstrated his latest experiment, a homemade volcano that erupted with baking soda and vinegar. Zara, the adventurer, dragged him outside to play tag and climb trees, insisting he keep up with her boundless energy. Through laughter and moments of awkwardness, Jonathan began to connect with them. He listened intently when they talked about their favorite foods, TV shows, and school subjects. He asked questions about their memories of Amara, cherishing the stories they shared. Slowly but surely, the walls of suspicion started to crumble. By the end of the week, Zara had stopped calling him Mr. Steele and started referring to him as Dad, though she still teased him relentlessly. Ava smiled more freely, showing off her artwork without hesitation. And Elijah, though still reserved, allowed himself to sit beside Jonathan during story time, leaning slightly against his arm. During one particularly poignant evening, Maya brought out a box of Amara's belongings. Inside were letters, photographs, and mementos she had saved for the triplets. Among them were several letters addressed to Jonathan, written in Amara's neat handwriting. Maya handed them to him, explaining, "She wrote these over the years, hoping someday you'd read them." Jonathan opened the first letter with trembling hands. In it, Amara described discovering she was pregnant and the whirlwind of emotions that followed. She wrote about her decision not to contact him, fearing it might disrupt his life or burden him financially. "I wanted to raise our children with love and joy, not resentment or obligation," she explained. "You have a big heart, Jonathan, even if you don't always see it yourself. Someday I hope you'll understand why I chose this path." Each letter revealed more of Amara's thoughts and feelings, painting a picture of a woman who loved deeply and sacrificed selflessly. One passage struck Jonathan especially hard. "Our kids are miracles. They remind me every day of the goodness in the world and of the night you and I crossed paths. Please take care of them, Jonathan. Teach them to dream big and love fiercely, just like their mama did." By the time he finished reading, tears streamed down Jonathan's face. He realized how much Amara had given, not just to him, but to their children. Her strength, compassion, and wisdom had shaped them into the incredible little humans they were today, and now it was his turn to carry that legacy forward. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan grew closer to the triplets. He learned to braid Ava's hair, helped Elijah debug his science projects, and joined Zara in backyard adventures. He discovered that parenting wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, listening, and loving unconditionally. With Maya's guidance, he navigated the challenges of co-parenting while respecting Amara's memory. Together, they created a blended family rooted in love, trust, and mutual respect. Though the pain of losing Amara lingered, Jonathan found solace in knowing she lived on through their children. Every smile, every hug, every milestone celebrated was a testament to her enduring influence. And as he watched the triplets grow, he vowed to honor her sacrifice by being the father they deserved, the father she had believed he could become. As the weeks turned into months, Jonathan's life transformed in ways he never could have predicted. The bustling streets of New York City, once the backdrop of his high-powered existence, began to feel distant and unfamiliar. His penthouse, with its sweeping views of Central Park, now seemed hollow compared to the warmth and laughter filling Maya's home in Atlanta. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt a sense of purpose that went beyond business deals and boardroom victories. He was building something far more meaningful, a family. Every visit to Atlanta brought new discoveries about his children and himself. Ava, Elijah, and Zara were not just reflections of Amara. They were individuals with their own quirks, passions, and dreams. Ava's love for art blossomed under Jonathan's encouragement. He bought her a set of professional-grade paints and sketchbooks, marveling at how her creativity flourished when given the right tools. One evening, she shyly handed him a painting she had worked on for days, a vibrant depiction of a snowy night with two figures standing beside a car engulfed in flames. At the bottom she had written, "The night Mom saved you." Jonathan's throat tightened as he realized the depth of her understanding. She knew the story of how Amara had saved his life, and somehow she had woven it into her art. It was a reminder that their connection ran deeper than blood. It was built on shared history, even if parts of it remained unspoken. Elijah, ever the thinker, challenged Jonathan in ways he hadn't anticipated. The boy's curiosity about science often led to long conversations about technology, space exploration, and the future. During one particularly memorable afternoon, Elijah asked, "Dad, do you think robots will take over the world someday?" Jonathan chuckled but answered thoughtfully, explaining both the possibilities and ethical dilemmas of artificial intelligence. Later that week, Elijah presented him with a handmade robot constructed from spare parts and wires. "I call it Steelbot," he announced proudly. "It's named after you because you're smart like a machine but also kind like a human." Jonathan ruffled his son's hair, feeling a swell of pride and gratitude. These moments weren't just about bonding. They were about learning to see the world through his children's eyes. Zara, the fearless adventurer, kept Jonathan on his toes. Whether it was climbing trees, racing bikes, or staging impromptu talent shows, she pushed him out of his comfort zone. On one occasion, she convinced him to join her in a neighborhood scavenger hunt. Dressed in mismatched outfits and armed with a list of clues, they sprinted from place to place, laughing until their sides hurt. By the end of the day, Jonathan realized he hadn't laughed so freely in years. Zara's boundless energy reminded him of the joy that came from embracing spontaneity, a lesson he had forgotten in the rigid structure of his corporate life. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, too. The triplets still grappled with the absence of their mother, and Jonathan often found himself navigating complex emotions alongside them. One evening, after tucking them into bed, Ava hesitantly asked, "Do you think Mom misses us?" Her voice trembled, and Jonathan felt his heart break. Sitting beside her, he chose his words carefully. "Your mom loved you more than anything in this world," he said softly. "And I believe she's watching over you, proud of the amazing kids you've become. She'll always be with you in your hearts, in your memories, and in everything she taught you." Maya played an invaluable role during these times. As Amara's sister, she understood the weight of loss and the importance of keeping her memory alive. Together, Jonathan and Maya created rituals to honor Amara, planting a tree in her favorite park, sharing stories about her at dinner, and celebrating her birthday with cake and candles. These traditions helped the triplets process their grief while reinforcing the bond they shared with their father. Maya also became a trusted confidant for Jonathan, offering advice on parenting and reminding him to be patient with the kids and with himself. Slowly but surely, Jonathan began to envision a new life for himself, one centered around his children. The idea of returning to New York and resuming his old routines felt less appealing with each passing day. Instead, he started making plans to relocate permanently to Atlanta. Selling his penthouse was bittersweet, but the decision felt right. He purchased a spacious house near Maya's, ensuring the triplets would have room to grow and play. The move marked a symbolic shift, not just geographically, but emotionally. Jonathan was leaving behind the man he used to be and stepping into a role he had never imagined, a devoted father. To ease the transition, Jonathan enrolled the triplets in local schools and immersed himself in their activities. He attended parent-teacher conferences, cheered loudly at soccer games, and volunteered as a chaperone for field trips. Teachers and other parents quickly warmed to him, noting how involved and attentive he was. For someone who had spent most of his adult life prioritizing work above all else, these small acts of presence felt revolutionary. In addition to focusing on his children, Jonathan sought ways to honor Amara's legacy. Inspired by her dedication to helping underserved communities, he established the Amara Thompson Foundation. The organization provided scholarships for single mothers pursuing education, funded healthcare initiatives in low-income neighborhoods, and supported programs aimed at empowering young girls. Through the foundation, Jonathan hoped to continue the work Amara had started, to uplift others just as she had uplifted him. As the months passed, Jonathan noticed subtle changes within himself. The constant drive for success no longer consumed him. Instead, he found fulfillment in simpler things. The sound of his children's laughter, the smell of pancakes cooking on a lazy Sunday morning, the quiet contentment of reading bedtime stories. He began journaling, documenting his journey as a father and reflecting on the lessons he was learning along the way. Writing became a form of therapy, allowing him to process his emotions and celebrate the progress he'd made. One evening, as he tucked the triplets into bed, Zara looked up at him with wide eyes. "Dad," she said, "are we your real family now?" Her question caught him off guard, but he smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've always been my real family," he replied. "I just didn't know it until now." That night, as Jonathan sat in the living room surrounded by photographs of Amara and the triplets, he allowed himself to cry. For the years he had missed, for the woman who had changed his life, and for the second chance he had been given. Tears streamed down his face, but they weren't born of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of hope, and of love. For the first time in years, Jonathan Steele felt truly whole. Life in Atlanta became a tapestry of new beginnings for Jonathan Steele. The sprawling house he purchased was more than just a home. It was a sanctuary where memories were made, laughter echoed through the halls, and love grew stronger with each passing day. Every corner of the house told a story. Ava's colorful paintings adorned the walls, Elijah's science projects cluttered the dining table, and Zara's collection of superhero capes hung proudly on hooks near the door. It wasn't perfect, there were spills, arguments, and late-night fevers, but it was real. And for Jonathan, that made all the difference. Mornings in the Steele household were chaotic, but joyful. The alarm clock would blare at 6:30 a.m., signaling the start of another busy day. Zara was usually the first one up, bounding into Jonathan's room to announce, "Rise and shine, Dad." Her energy was infectious, even on days when Jonathan wished he could stay in bed just a little longer. Ava followed soon after, clutching her sketchbook and asking if she could draw while eating breakfast. Elijah preferred quiet mornings, often sitting at the kitchen counter with a bowl of cereal and a book about space exploration. Watching them interact, Jonathan marveled at how seamlessly they had woven themselves into his life, and how much brighter his world had become because of them. School drop-offs became a cherished ritual. Jonathan insisted on driving the triplets every morning, despite their protests that they were too old for such treatment. They piled into the car, chattering excitedly about their plans for the day. Zara talked about soccer practice, Ava described an upcoming art project, and Elijah shared theories about black holes. Listening to them, Jonathan felt a deep sense of pride, not just in who they were becoming, but in the fact that he got to witness it firsthand. These small moments, once taken for granted, now felt like treasures. Afternoons were reserved for work, or at least what remained of it. Jonathan scaled back significantly on his business commitments, delegating responsibilities to trusted colleagues so he could focus on his family. He still checked emails and attended occasional meetings, but his priorities had shifted. Success was no longer measured by profit margins or stock prices. It was defined by the smiles on his children's faces and the progress they made together as a family. On weekends, he dedicated himself entirely to the triplets, whether it was coaching Zara's soccer team, helping Ava prepare for an art exhibition, or assisting Elijah with his latest invention, a solar-powered flashlight. Evenings were a time for connection. Dinner was always a family affair, with everyone pitching in to set the table and clean up afterward. Maya joined them frequently, bringing stories from her own childhood with Amara. She regaled the kids with tales of their mother's mischievous adventures, making them laugh until tears streamed down their cheeks. Through these conversations, Jonathan learned even more about the woman who had saved his life and given him the greatest gift imaginable. He saw glimpses of her in everything they did, the kindness in Ava's gestures, the curiosity in Elijah's questions, and the fearlessness in Zara's spirit. Bedtime was perhaps the most special part of the day. After baths and pajamas, Jonathan gathered the triplets in the living room for story time. Sometimes he read from their favorite books. Other times he shared stories about Amara. He spoke of her bravery during the accident, her dedication to helping others, and the warmth she radiated whenever she smiled. "Your mom was extraordinary," he told them one night, his voice thick with emotion. "She taught me what it means to truly live, to care deeply, to give freely, and to love unconditionally. You remind me of her every single day." The triplets listened intently, soaking in every word. When he finished, Ava whispered, "I miss her." Jonathan pulled her close, holding her tightly as tears welled up in his eyes. "We all do," he said softly. "But she's here, sweetheart. In our hearts, in our memories, and in everything we carry forward from her." As the months turned into years, Jonathan's bond with the triplets deepened. They celebrated milestones. Together, Ava's first art show, Elijah's acceptance into a gifted science program, and Zara scoring the winning goal in her soccer championship. Each achievement was a testament to their resilience and potential, qualities they inherited from both Amara and Jonathan. Yet it wasn't just the big moments that mattered. It was the quiet ones, too. The lazy Saturday mornings spent playing board games, the impromptu dance parties in the living room, and the whispered promises of bedtime kisses. Through it all, Jonathan continued to honor Amara's legacy. The Amara Thompson Foundation flourished, providing support to countless families in need. He organized annual community events in her name, inviting local artists, scientists, and activists to inspire the next generation. At one such event, Zara stood proudly beside him as he delivered a speech. "My wife, my children's mother, was a hero," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "She believed in the power of compassion and the importance of lifting others up. Today, we celebrate her life by continuing her work. Together, we can create a world she would be proud of." The crowd erupted in applause, but Jonathan's gaze remained fixed on Zara. Her wide eyes sparkled with admiration, and for the first time he realized she saw him not just as her dad, but as someone who carried her mother's torch. It was a humbling realization, one that filled him with purpose and determination. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, nearly 5 years after meeting the triplets, Jonathan found himself sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee. The sun warmed his face and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tree they had planted in Amara's memory. Inside the house, laughter spilled from the open windows as the triplets played a raucous game of hide-and-seek. For a moment, Jonathan closed his eyes, letting the sounds wash over him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the icy night of the accident to the vibrant life he now led. So much had changed, yet one thing remained constant: gratitude. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, but they weren't born of sadness. They were tears of joy, of relief, of love. Jonathan wiped them away, smiling as Zara burst out the front door shouting, "Dad, come play with us." He set down his coffee mug and joined her, laughing as she tugged him toward the backyard. As he chased her around the yard, dodging Ava's ambush and Elijah's strategic hiding spots, Jonathan felt a profound sense of peace. Amara had given him a second chance, not just to survive, but to thrive. Through her courage, sacrifice, and unwavering love, she had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined. And though she was gone, her presence was everywhere, in the laughter of her children, in the strength of their bonds, and in the legacy she left behind. For Jonathan Steele, this was no longer a story of loss. It was a story of redemption, connection, and hope. And as he looked at the 3 smiling faces before him, he knew one thing for certain. He was finally living the life Amara had always envisioned for him.